Hello, everybody. Welcome. I'm Skip Elsheimer, and this is our avgeeks lunchtime streaming show. Running a little late today, suffering from a little bit of headline fatigue. So this is a welcome change.
Hello, everybody.
Let me mute this.
Keep up.
That's how off I am today. Coffee. I need coffee. So if you guys want to support a guy who collects a lot of 16mm films, but for some reason is not getting enough caffeine in his diet, then have at it. So let's see. Hold on. All right. I don't know if you guys can hear me or not. It seems like we should be able to hear me. This is what I get for reading comments. Yeah. Anyways, this next film, I was going to thread it up, is either... This is what happens sometimes. So we get a film, and this isn't a film that I bought on eBay. This is a film somebody just gave me a box of films. So we've got two options here. One is, it is Rapunzel. The other is, it's Introduction to Haiti. So I'm going to thread it up, and we're going to see there's a card in here that says Introduction to Haiti, Part 2, but, you know, the Sharpie says Rapunzel. So I'm going to go ahead and thread it up. I'll give you a sense of what we do here. So this is longtime fans know what this is. It's a telecine. And so the telecine basically converts from film to video with a camera, and it does it in real time. And that's very different than a scanner. A film scanner sometimes uses other means to digitize film, and sometimes it does it in real time, sometimes it does it slower than real time, sometimes it does faster than real time. And it basically is generating files. This has a video out. So there's a video camera right here. I'm trying to block it. Right here, and there's a mirror that's aiming up. And so earlier versions of this were called film chains. TV stations would have them, and so whenever they shot news film, or showed a commercial, or showed a syndicated show that wasn't on videotape, they would have a 16mm film chain that would, with a camera hooked up to it and a 5-bladed shutter that would minimize the flicker. And this, what it does to minimize the flicker is it has a little sprocketed wheel right here. Now it doesn't use the sprocketed wheel to pull the film through. It just uses it to measure. So this is all using a capstan, which is right here, which is a friction-based thing. And there's not a claw that pulls the film through like a traditional projector. So that's kind of your difference. This is a weird machine in that the sound head is before the visual gate. Usually it's after. And this has a built-in delay so that it delays it appropriately so it syncs up. So this is, Germans made this, MWA Nova. And I've had Germans at my archive, which was my house at the time, many times fixing this machine. So it's a workhorse, but you know, it had occasional, when it was shipped, it had some issues. So this is either Introduction to Haiti or it's Rapunzel. World premiere, we don't know what it is. So let's see if I can figure it out. We can figure it out while we watch. Enjoy.
you love tales of the sea, you probably have read many times of the Windward Passage. You traverse its salty expanse when you sail around the southeast end of Cuba, largest island of the West Indies. Should you go straight out from that southeast end of Cuba, as Columbus did on the 6th of December, 1492, and breast the intervening 50 miles of foaming, rushing blue water with its flying fish and screaming seabirds, you will come next to the second largest island of the romantic archipelago, an island wholly in the tropics. It is a cluster of steep mountain tops arising from broad bases on the ocean floor to make a heavily broken patch of terra firma about the size of our own rugged state of Maine. From the water level, though, the mountains are not very high. Even the tallest is under 9,000 feet. When Columbus saw this particular island, he called it Hispaniola, the Spanish. But the million or so Arawak Indians who were there before him already had a name for it. They called it Haiti, Land of Mountains. The name still varies, for today it comprises no less than 2 of the republics of the Western Hemisphere. The Dominican Republic occupies perhaps 2/3 of the area. What appears here is Port-au-Prince, capital city of the other, the Republic of Haiti, on the western third of the island. An excellent harbor encourages shipping, and Port-au-Prince has the additional advantage of being on an important air route between North and South America. In Columbus's day, the Indians thought that he came out of the sky in ships that really were great birds. The Spaniards were amused. But today, strangers from afar actually do descend on Haiti from the sky. Port-au-Prince is Haiti's capital in all respects, not only in transportation or in trade. The imposing twin-towered Notre Dame Cathedral there is the spiritual center for most of the citizens. The impressive National Palace, where the president lives, represents political authority. And here, the National School of Medicine is a convenient symbol of higher education in a country where the population is approximately 275 persons to the square mile. That is a density greater than is recorded for any other republic in the Americas. The local marketplace at Port-au-Prince shows a much greater density, but it is merely the gathering spot of small tradesmen who deal principally in perishable foodstuffs for metropolitan consumption. One finds here, in rich volubility, that a special variation of French which is called Creole. The people speak French, but over 90% of the population is of African origin. Haiti is one of the few independent Negro nations in the world. No point in lingering over the marketplace now, though. It's lunchtime, and practically everybody is stopping for a snack and a snooze. It is not especially hot. A breeze almost always blows in from the sea to keep the temperature at an average of 75 degrees to 85 degrees, summer and winter. While the teeming marketplace slows down into its noonday quiet, we are given an opportunity to look into some of the other parts of the town. Dwellings are not pretentious. Structures of more than one story are uncommon, but each is its owner's castle. It is the house of a free man. In that concept, let us overlook the rude construction, the lack of facilities that we have come to regard as our everyday conveniences. For these people have something infinitely more precious than material wealth. In a world that is battling the last stand of despotism, these citizens of Haiti, like us, are blessed with liberty. Haiti's memories of her upward struggle show most clearly in her popular celebrations. The signs are varied and interesting. They show clearly, with but one exception. Where could an Anglo-Saxon maypole have come from? Your guess is as good as any. But these men with high ceremonial headdresses, how reminiscent they are of processional figures in days of the Spanish conquest. Here are children waiting to join the celebration, purporting to be those Indian aborigines who greeted Columbus. Unhappy people they were. Conquered, enslaved, and worked to their last ounce of energy, those Indians died completely off in 25 years. They died mainly because they had known freedom and could not live without it. Whole centuries would have passed before Haiti would really know freedom again. In 1517, Negro slaves were brought from Africa to repopulate the island. The French took over in 1697, constantly adding more slaves to increase the yield of their large plantations, and by such slave labor, making Haiti extremely rich in trade. These grotesque figures are memories of that century of the plantations. Through the tangle of these survivals comes, too, the powerful racial origin in Africa, the chief factor in the mysterious, smoldering, shuddery voodoo of Haiti. Thus the Haitians obey the eternal human impulse to remember and to drive home to themselves over and over again the outstanding lessons in their turbulent history. Modern things such as automobiles and jazzy saxophones joining in further to confuse the bewildered tourists. Haiti was the second nation of the New World to establish an independent government. January 1, 1804, when this was done, marked not only a birth of independence, but an emancipation from slavery. The greater part of the republic is situated on two large peninsulas, and that gives a relatively small country an extraordinarily long coastline. It has no less than 14 seaports. Among these is the city second in importance, Cap Haitien. Columbus built a fortress here. But tourists come to Cap Haitien less for Columbus than to visit the nearby village of Milot and the mountain that towers above it. For Cap Haitien was the seat of government in the tumultuous days of King Henri Christophe, and his palace, which he called Sans-Souci, at the village of Milot, was where he entertained his courtiers. Christophe was one of the black leaders who arose with Toussaint Louverture, freeing their fellow slaves and driving out the French who had ruled them for more than a century. On the trail above the ruins of Sans-Souci, the tourists make their 2.5 to 3 hours climb to the 2,600-foot level, where a far more magnificent pile attests the glory that was Christophe's. He was a monarch then, self-crowned king of Haiti. There is the place, the century-old citadel La Ferrière. Christophe built it as a last stronghold should he ever need one. Actually, when he died in 1820, it was by his own hand, stone walls and high inaccessibility of no avail. He feared his enemies, and with reason. Back of each of the 365 windows in his citadel was a cannon aimed at intruders who never came. Yet, if Christophe had vast faults, he had grander virtues. As an administrator, he did much to raise his people. He established schools, built roads, encouraged agriculture. The citadel failed his purpose, no doubt, but it serves another that he did not anticipate. It is a solemn reminder to tourists who clamber thoughtlessly over the moss-covered ramparts that all North America owes a lasting debt to Haiti. It stands for the great change at the opening of the 19th century in Europe's attitude toward the New World, the end of her fond dreams of American conquest. The train of disasters that Christophe and his fellows caused the French persuaded Napoleon that the price of Western Empire was too great. He suddenly decided to sell out, the United States making the Louisiana Purchase from him for $15 million. So perhaps to those who use more than their eyes in looking at Haiti, there is neither stick nor stone nor living thing in all the Republic which does not somehow symbolize the spirit of our own liberty. Our proud history might be far less than it is if Christophe and his fellows had never lived or had prized their freedom less.
Wow, that was pretty amazing. I had not seen that film, and it's beautiful Kodachrome. I don't think it's IB Tech. Somebody chimed in, and the soundtrack is a traditional optical soundtrack. It's not that kind of variable density. And it kind of suffers from the thing that Kodachrome shot and then being printed to sound. You notice that people were sped up because people shot the movies at 18 frames a second and then they printed it 1:1, 24 frames a second, so everybody looks sped up. and then the narration is normal 24 frames a second. And also there's a contrast, like anything that's in the shadows of Kodachrome, when you print it, if you're not compensating for that, then everything is dark. So this looked very dark except for eyes, and occasionally you would see a highlight of skin tone. You might have noticed a couple times the film was rolling. That's basically the film is beginning to shrink a little bit, so it's not completely always connecting with the sprocketed wheel, and so that's why it's rolling. When I use a scanner, the scanner has a better way to determine a frame, and so you don't get that rolling as much. So we're learning a lot today. I should say that first film that we watched was Cap and Gown Manufacturing, and it was just raw footage. That was written on the outside of the can, and I think it was Jostens. I have another one that's Class Rings, but it has gotten very, very vinegared, and I haven't had a chance to try it on a scanner to see if I can get it to lie flat and to scan it. But this was something that somebody found at University of South Carolina in a box, and they didn't really want it, and the archive there didn't want it, so they just passed it on to me, and so there you go. I'm guessing this was a promotional. That was a promotional film. I mean, it doesn't have titles or anything, but it was like, here's the process, and here's how we do it, and all that stuff. That's what it feels like. Is it would be something that would be shown, and then the salesperson would be narrating over the film as it was shown. Let's learn about making the most of school.
Did you ever stop to think how much time you spend in school? Ever stop to think about the use you make of your time? What are you doing in school? Do you just go, get passing grades? Or do you make this time really count for something? Look at the students in this science lab. How are they using their time? What about Carl? He's finished his notes on the mechanics experiment that was assigned. He still has 15 minutes until the bell. Nothing to do. Time to waste. Finished ahead of everyone else. Or so he thinks. Anyway, he's finished ahead of Ellen. She seems to be having trouble. Carl would like to help, but she's looking for someone else. Why? Why does she go over to ask Andy when Carl is right at the same table? Let's see what her question is. She can't measure the distances because the beam keeps slipping. Maybe it's just as well she didn't ask Carl. He doesn't seem to know himself. But Andy does. Tightening the supporting string and lowering the whole apparatus will make it work better. How about that? Andy has a way of knowing extra things. Ellen knew that. She had a pretty good idea that Andy would be able to help her. How does he do it? Is he smarter than Carl? Does he study more at home? Let's keep an eye on Andy and see just what he does that's different. Well, for one thing, that experiment is different from the one assigned for today. Why is that? Oh, that's why. Andy has finished the regular assignment, and he's gone on to do an extra one in the time remaining before the bell. He's studying more than just what is required, using the time that Carl figured was going to waste. Maybe Carl wasn't the first to finish after all. Maybe he could get more out of his time in school. Now comes a decision. He'll make a list of ways he can learn from other people How to get more out of school. The first way is Andy's way. Make use of your time. Not necessarily put in more time, just use it right. After all, it's up to you to make something of your school time or waste it. There's another thing Andy has done that's a tip for Carl and all of us. Figuring out what caused that beam to slide and tilt is using your head to overcome obstacles and so gain extra value from your work. The way to get more out of your time in school is to be resourceful. Use what you have in doing what you have to do. Take stock of your time in school. You'll get more out of class time by volunteering to recite, entering into discussions, taking an active part. You'll get more out of study time by learning how to improve your reading and how to improve your study habits so as to get more work done in the same amount of time. You'll even get more out of your lunch time if you use it to make friends and plan activities. A chance to work on an exhibit like this is a chance to be resourceful. Every day brings new opportunities to make better use of your time by being resourceful if you train yourself for those opportunities. Now Carl is looking for new ideas for getting more out of school. About Peggy. She seems to enjoy all her classes and get a lot out of them too. But why is she using a microscope? What does that have to do with today's science experiment? Let's figure it out. That looks like a thread she has there. And look at that book, Textile Fibers. Of course, she's finished her science assignment too, and she seems to be doing a little extra work in home economics. She wants to see for herself the actual difference between woolen and worsted yarns. When you have a chance to do something extra to learn, don't let the opportunity slip by. Let's make a note about that. How about investigate opportunities? Look for chances to learn more than just enough to get by. For instance, next time you have a paper to write, see if you can't choose a subject you really want to know more about. Go out and investigate first-hand information. In almost any book you study, you'll find a bibliography which will lead you to further investigation of the subject, to new opportunities to make better use of your school time. Time. Say, maybe that's why Peggy is putting away the microscope. And Andy is ready to clean up too. So Carl decides that he'd better rush to get everything off the table and into the cabinet. Do you ever put things away like this? Is this really saving time? But wait, that chart of lab equipment. Have to check that. If things are organized neatly, it will be easier to check the list to see if anything is missing. Where's that 200-gram weight? Yes, it's easy to see that rules help you and help other people too. When everyone puts things away and checks them off, then no one loses time looking for things next period. Rules about cleaning up and other things help everyone to get along better together and to make the most of school. Know the rules and follow them. Actually, these are only a few to do more than just get by. What about student activities, possibilities? Perhaps you'd enjoy wrangling around a round table or working on school publications. School clubs offer opportunities to exchange ideas and make friends. And so do sports, whether you make the school team or just have fun. Put your mind to it. You'll discover many ways to get more out of school. Think back to the way Andy makes use of his time. Think of ways of being resourceful and ways to investigate opportunities. You'll find that rules help you as well as the whole school. And by keeping your eyes and ears open, you'll find, as Carl has, that there are many ways to get more out of school.
Thank you for Coronet for teaching me not to lollygag. How I can use lunch to my advantage. Usually I would sit around with friends and we would talk about Saturday Night Live skits. That's what I would do during lunch. So let's see, what do we got next? I have another film queued up right here. It is another one from this batch. I got, like I said, a box of films, of some of which I went through, but some of them I just was like, well, I'll get to them some point. And, well, here I am getting into them. And this is another Cornet film from another time. And you can tell, there's this transition to the openings kind of change over time. And this one, I feel like is a 60s film. The color has faded, and I tried to reduce the red, but it was beet red when I put it on here. So here is Reading Signs is Fun.
Andy usually likes the walk from grandmother's house. But today the ride seems too long. Andy doesn't have anything to do. His father thinks of something. Maybe Andy can help with the driving. That would be fun. But Andy knows he's not old enough to drive. How can he help? By reading signs, Dad says. Andy knows he can't read well enough for that. Even his father isn't fast enough to read all the words on some big signs. They seem to go by so fast. But Dad knows there are some signs that are easy to read. There are no words on them. After a little practice, Andy can tell what these signs mean. One sign shows that there's a curve ahead. Dad has to turn left. Another sign shows a different kind of curve. Dad has to turn right. Still another sign shows a curve that looks something like the letter S. It's an S curve. Dad has to turn one way. Then he turns the other way. This sign has lines that cross. It means Andy and his father are coming to a road that crosses the one they're on. Dad watches for cars coming on the crossroad. Andy wishes all signs were so easy to understand. The ride must end soon, but from now on, he'll have fun with signs. A day later, Andy is on his way to school with his sister. There are signs, and some are like the ones he saw on the road.
They let him know something without words. One sign looks like a big camera. The sign is outside a shop where cameras are sold. It's easy to read signs that are pictures. Another sign looks like a big ice cream. Andy knows what they sell there. Another sign is just as easy to figure out. It looks like a shoe. It's in the shop where Andy's father buys shoes. But many signs have words on them. And some words are hard to figure out. There are ways to find what these signs mean too. And as he goes to school, Andy thinks he's found one way. Sometimes Mrs. Logan, the school crossing guard, signals with her arms to stop cars. Other times she stops cars in a different way. She holds up a stop sign, and drivers know what she means. At the next street Andy and his sister must cross, there is no crossing guard, only a stop sign, like the one Mrs. Logan was holding. When drivers read the sign, they stop their cars. So Andy can find the meaning of a sign if he knows what a person using the sign wants to tell people. In this case, stop. Later in the day, after school, Andy plays with his best friend, Will. What does this sign mean? Andy remembers something he saw a few days ago. He saw people look at the sign, then look at the house. The sign is about the house. Will's father showed the people around the house. This might have something to do with the sign. The sign says, "For sale." Will's father wants people to know that the house is for sale. On his way home, Andy passes Mr. Corey's house. He knows this house is not for sale. Then what is Mr. Corey trying to tell people? Well, where is the sign? It's not just any place. It's on the lawn. So maybe the sign is about the lawn. Andy remembers how Mr. Corey feels about his lawn. He's very proud of it, and he likes to keep it beautiful. When Mr. Corey sees that people may walk on his lawn, he says, "Please keep off my lawn. Please keep off. Please. Please." The sign says, "Please." Andy has noticed another kind of sign on his own house. It has no picture and no words, just the number 124. A number like this is important to a delivery man who brings packages to people's houses. The houses here are numbered 120. Then 122. So you might guess that the next number is 124. This is Andy's house. The man knows it because he's seen the sign. Another day, Andy is playing with his friends. While the boys and girls play, maybe you can have some fun reading signs. Aren't the boys and girls playing like the boy on this sign? What do you think the sign means? The picture looks as though it has something to do with children playing, and the sign is near the street, where drivers can see it. When a driver sees the sign, he slows his car. The sign means slow, children playing. Signs like this help to keep people safe. At the corner is another sign. It's on the trash basket. The basket is a place for old paper. But the words on the sign don't say paper. What do you think the sign means? Maybe you've seen this word before, the word clean. So the sign says something about keeping things clean. What things? Well, we see baskets and signs like this all around the city. So the sign may be about keeping the city clean. Yes, keep our city clean. Around the corner from Andy's house is a movie theater. It has a big sign that tells what's playing. What picture is playing? Well, we know this word, boy. So this picture must be about a boy. And we know this word, dog. So the picture must be about a dog, too. The name of the picture is A Boy and His Dog. If you happen to like dogs, it could be fun to see. Here are Andy and his father again, going shopping. As Andy walks, the signs he passes let him know many things. Groceries are sold here. This store has animals for sale. What does the sign say? This store has things to play with. What does the sign say? Like Andy, you'll learn that there are different kinds of signs everywhere. There are signs that mark roads. Signs that help you to find a house you may be looking for. Signs that help you to keep safe. Signs that remind you to keep our city clean. And signs that let you know where you may have fun. You can have fun too, finding out what signs mean, learning to read signs.
Please. More like this. Please. That's actually a really great film. And it had another Andy in it. I don't think there's a lot of Andys in Cornet films, but how about that? Showing 2 in a row that have Andys. So I was looking here. WorldCat is worldcat.org is a place that I often look for resources, information about a film. And its accuracy is probably 85%. There's some stuff that's just wrong that I've run across, and some stuff that doesn't show up in these lists. But it's better than nothing. Like when I first started collecting films, I didn't have anything. I didn't have any resources. I would like scour used bookstores and try to find AV catalogs. And thankfully, the first collection I got, actually, there was an AV catalog that the North Carolina Cultural Resource Department put out, and so I was able to kind of cross-reference a lot of things. But it wasn't digital at all. So I was looking to see 1, 2, 3, 7. All right, and how many? This will all make sense when I get to it. Let's see. So I have 7. I have all of the films. Okay. So, as a completionist, you want me to show everything that I have in a series, right? Everything I got, if I have it. And over the time that we've been doing this, I've shown every single Uncle Smiley film except for one. And it was because of some poor notation that I skipped over the one that we haven't shown. So I feel bad about that, and I want to show this to you. Now, I know that some of you really don't like Uncle Smiley, so feel good in the fact that this is the last Uncle Smiley film that was ever made. There were only 7 of them made, and this is it. There's no more after this, so I'm sorry, no more Uncle Smiley. Now, what I'm hoping is at some point somebody will say, or I'll run across a film that also has Uncle Smiley in it that isn't titled an Uncle Smiley film. That's deep in my heart. I hope. Excuse me. I hope that's what's happening. Let me say thank you to Matthew for the coffee. Very much appreciated. Coffee is a quick and easy way to reward us or punish us for what we're doing to you. So here we go. This is the last one. Until I can find maybe another film that features Uncle Smiley as a character, or maybe in the background. I don't know. Jim Burrows, the guy who kind of created this Uncle Smiley phenomenon and wrote the songs, he did a lot of educational films. So I'm hoping at some point I will find Uncle Smiley in another film. But until then, this is it. This is the end of it. So here we go. Uncle Smiley goes to the beach.
Who is the one when the school day is done that the kids always run to its Uncle Dave? Whose is the place where the kids always race? They've got no time to waste when it's Uncle Smiley. Uncle's the one who's always busy, they know. Too busy working to get up and go. But Uncle's a friend who can never say no. So Uncle Smiley, get up and go. Uncle's the one, he's a barrel of fun. Just look out, here he comes. It's Uncle Smiley, stumbling around like a carnival clown. He's a part of the town, he's our Uncle Smiley. When there's a job to be done, old Uncle is always the one. No matter what happens, it's bound to be fun. So Uncle Smiley, get up and go. So Uncle Smiley, get up and go.
Hey, who's that way out there?
That's us, silly. Don't you remember? This is the movie of the last time we went to the beach with Uncle Smiley.
Oh yeah, I remember. Ooh, that sure was fun.
And we learned a lot of things that day, too, that we never knew before.
We sure did, and so did Uncle Smiley, especially about being careful around the water.
I'll say he almost drowned, for real.
But it sure was a nice day for swimming, and it sure was a nice beach, too. You know, I used to think that all beaches were pretty much the same.
Me, too, until Uncle showed us that other beach later on.
Hey, remember this? When Uncle tried to put up his beach umbrella?
How could anybody forget? Poor old Uncle Smiley. He has more trouble with mechanical things than almost anybody I know.
Going to the beach on a bright and sunny morning. Gonna take a splash in the big blue salty sea. It's fun to play by the big blue wavy ocean. Summer and sand by the big blue salty sea. Running hand in hand on a bright new morning. Umbrellas in the sand by the big blue sea. Splashing around we sometimes get the notion that everywhere is clean by the big blue sea. The sky is bright around us, the sand is white around us, the only sounds are of the sea. No litter on the seashore, no smoke to make your eyes sore, this is the way that it should be. Feel the white sand sifting through your fingers, see the crystals glitter bright and clear. Mix them with the water from the ocean. You can be a seashore engineer. Watch the water follow in your footprints, running with your buckets filled with sea. Pure blue ocean trickling through your fingers. We're lucky that we have a big blue sea. The bright around us, the sand is white around us. The only sounds are of the sea. No litter on the seashore, no smoke to make your eyes sore. This is the way that it should be.
Do you remember when Uncle ran into the ocean with that giant inner tube?
I'll say. He never even noticed the sign or the rocks or anything. Boy, was that a dangerous thing to do.
We all tried to stop him, but I guess he had made his mind up. Sometimes Uncle thinks that just because he's a grown-up, he can do things kids aren't allowed to do.
We kept shouting to him, but pretty soon he was so far out he couldn't even hear us.
Yeah, not only was he disobeying the sign, but he was using that old inner tube to float with.
And that's extra dangerous, because if you're in deep water and it ever breaks, you're really in trouble.
And especially Uncle Smiley, because he just kind of sinks.
The current kept taking him farther and farther away from shore and closer to those scary rocks.
There was nothing we could do but shout, and Uncle couldn't even hear us way out there.
I shouted so much my throat started hurting.
Boy, was I worried.
So was everybody, even the lifeguard. Uncle never heard him shouting either, even when he blew his whistle.
He never had any idea at all how much trouble he was in, but he sure found out in a hurry when he crashed into those rocks.
The inner tube popped and there was nothing for Uncle to hold on to.
Yeah, he was really in trouble when the lifeguard finally got to him. Those waves are really big near the rocks.
The lifeguard got there just in time.
He had a lot of trouble rescuing Uncle, too.
Yeah, he said he'd never saved anybody as heavy as Uncle before.
Poor Uncle Smiley.
Uncle took us for a walk to another beach to show us what can happen to an ocean beach. Hard to realize how this could happen. Hard to understand how this could be. Too many people and too many empty trash cans. Too many boats dropping oil in the big blue sea. Too many cans and too many empty bottles. Too many things to hurt the big blue sea. Too many things to hurt the big blue sea.
Golly, that wasn't really a beach at all. I mean, it's hard to imagine that that place could ever have been a nice beach. Can you imagine going swimming there?
No, but it really was a nice beach once. Uncle Smiley said so, and people ruined it.
What kind of people would have done something like that?
Well, probably people just like us.
That's silly. We've never put poison in the water and killed fish, or throwing piles of trash everywhere.
Well, it wasn't just a few people like us. It was probably hundreds of people, or maybe thousands even. Just think, if each person just dropped one empty can or spilled just a little bit of oil in the ocean, how much it would add up to all together.
While we were walking along the same beach a little later, we found a little white bird that was all tangled up in fishing line.
Yeah, it could hardly move. If we hadn't come along, I guess the little bird would have just starved to death.
Or broken his wings trying to fly away.
Uncle Smiley knew just what to do to untangle the little bird. He was very, very careful not to hurt it.
Uncle sure does love animals and birds and things, doesn't he?
Yeah, and I think they love him too.
You know, I wish people realized that when they leave litter and things around like that fishing line, it can really hurt animals and birds, and people too.
It's so easy just to take this stuff to a trash can and throw it away.
Speaking of trash cans, do you remember the one that somebody had turned over and emptied all over the sand?
Yeah, it didn't take us long to fix that one up, did it?
Most folks think the air we breathe is free. The same thing goes we feel for the big blue sea. The sea's so deep and wide we think whatever we throw will simply sink, but soon there may not be a big blue sea. The sky is bright around us, the sand is white around us, the only sounds are of the sea. No litter on the seashore, no smoke to make your eyes sore, this is the way that it should be. Going to the beach on a bright and sunny morning, gonna take a splash in the big blue salty sea. It's fun to play by the big blue wavy ocean, summer and sand by the big blue salty sea. So enjoy yourself and play by the ocean shore, but don't forget to keep in mind the score. There's little time now left to wait much more will be too late, 'cause soon there may not be a big blue sea. Nowhere that we can play beside the sea. There may not be a beach for you and me. There may not be a beach for you and me. Soon there may not be a big blue sea.
I think Horace Glass is no longer with us. I think he was in poor health for a while. I had a conversation with the daughter of Jim Burroughs, who lives in Virginia, and she was telling me that Horace and Jim were good friends, and Horace never really held down a job. He was always kind of this free spirit, and at one point he lived in a bus in Maine. So, not down by the river. But yeah. A lot of people really love Uncle Smiley. There's some big fans who saw this as a kid. And I can tell that some of you really have no tolerance for this. So, I apologize for that. And I'll make up for it by showing you some drag race footage. So I figured I'd counterbalance one aspect of the 70s with the other aspect of the 70s, kind of a spectrum of air pollution, noise pollution, and tube tops. Yeah, so that film footage came from this filmmaker, Matt McCormick, who is based in Portland. And Matt he met somebody who used to work at a TV station and got hundreds of little tiny reels of film, of commercials, of public service announcements, of random stuff like this. And he took some of it, but then he was like, I don't want this anymore. I don't need this anymore. So he actually donated it to me, and I visited him in Portland. I was doing some screenings there, and I visited him and packed these boxes up, and they came back, and slowly been going through them. One of the things that was in that collection, besides a lot of these public service announcements I've been showing from the 70s and ABC spots, there was some basketball footage of these white guys, college guys playing basketball. And it actually got featured on the Colbert Report. And the person who was actually in it reached out to me, and who was one of the basketball players. Is like, hey, they attributed this to you, and I saw this on here, and I was like, oh, I have this, so I made a copy of it for him. And so there's this weird kind of loop of what happens when we show stuff. We put stuff online, and people show it, and then they get shown on other things, and it gets shown on network television, and then the person who's in it finds it, sees it, and is excited and reaches out to me. So that's a great thing. Another great thing is the fact that when I started this show this morning, I was in a fairly foul mood, and showing these films to you, talking to you, it's one way, but through your comments and everything, put me in a better mood. So thank you so much. This is a daily thing that I hope helps your morale, but definitely helps my morale. It's a good little boost in my mental health, and so thank you for that. And thank you for the coffee, and thank you for the shares. You can like and subscribe, but yeah, it just put me in a good mood. So thanks, guys and gals, everybody. And so we'll be back tomorrow. Tomorrow is a special thing. We're going to have guests. Joe and Nick from Found Footage Festival are going to join me, and I'm going to show some films. One film that Nick saw and remembered as a kid, and another one that Joe saw but not quite. But I'm wondering if it was a film that he saw as a kid, and he's just not remembering it correct. So we'll see. And then they're going to bring some stuff too. So they're fun guys. They're collectors. They collect videotape and do what I do, but they do it differently. They have a different take on it, and so I'm excited to have them on the show. So tomorrow, 1 o'clock Eastern Standard Time. As always, please rewind and love each other, just like what was written in this film can. And we will see you tomorrow. Take care.